All right, loves, let's get into healing and expanding and communication and communion and intimacy and fulfillment and relief and some play with all of the peoples in our lives, especially the key people, the core people, the significant others. There are lots of reasons relationships thrive. I think there's lots of universal reasons. And myself and VS have narrowed this down to 10 reasons relationships thrive. Just a side note, if you're new around here and you haven't been in our Heart Center membership, well, one, you should come into the Heart Center membership because refuge, because summer of love, because intimacy. And one of the key contributors to that community and all of the meditations and visualizations that I've been co-creating for the last few years is a metaphysical practitioner named VS. She has been working with me to co-create all the esoterica stuff. And sometimes we get together on podcasts, or she will send me this transmission of 4 things I should be talking about the chakra system, or harmony, or dis-ease, nervous system regulation, dysregulation, all those things. And this episode on relationship thriving is a perfect example of our collaboration. So let's get into it. Reason number 1 that relationships tend to thrive is that we seek to understand. Now, I don't think we need to first seek to understand the other person's perspective, but eventually we need to be curious about that. In the most virtuous soul quality sense, I think we could kind of go prayer of St. Francis on this, where, where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Doubt, faith. Despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. But this is it. Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand. So that's what I'm italicizing and bolding. And I rarely italicize and bold something at the same time because that's just over the top. And Helvetica does not require that because it's such a beautifully designed font. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to enlightened relationship. I'll finish prayer of St. Francis for you. To be loved as to love, for it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born into eternal life. I think death here is the death of the ego, although I really don't agree that there's ego death. I think the ego is a creation of the mind, therefore it exists in a particular dimension, and we're not trying to kill or obscure or relegate our ego. We're trying to love, integrate our ego so it calms the fuck down. But back to seeking to understand first as opposed to being understood. So sometimes when we're in that moment of dysregulation, of feeling misunderstood, and we've got this sense of urgency that we really need to be heard and seen and felt so that we can get through the bump, so that we can get to the other side of this conversation. Sometimes it really makes sense. It's the higher self thing to do to make sure that the other person is understanding you first and foremost, and then we can proceed. And that is cool. And you have to sometimes say a quick prayer to get your priorities straight. Like, is this one of those moments where I really need to clearly articulate that I really need to be understood so that we can make some progress? Or can I just take a deep breath from my heart center, press pause on my own needs, and first seek to understand before I need to be understood? So, depending on the day will depend on how enlightened you're going to be. But the whole idea here with thriving is that at some point we are seeking to understand. So let me give you the definition of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So that's the classical definition. I don't necessarily agree with all of that. I think, yes, the ability, yes, we all want to be capable and grow our capacity to see other perspectives and points of views and origins of feelings. Yeah. We don't necessarily need to share the feelings of other people. We don't need to feel them. We don't need to stew on them. We do not need to relate to them. We don't need to think that their feeling makes any sense whatsoever. We just need to respect that they're having that feeling, understand where it might come from. Why do they feel that way? And then take it to the next step. What are the effects of feeling that way? You feel sad? How's that going to affect your thoughts, your speech, your behavior? You're feeling angry? How's that going to affect how you show up in the world and make decisions? You're feeling left out? Oh my gosh, you must be thinking all these other things about yourself. So we all thrive in all circumstances when we seek to understand the other person's point of view. We do not need to agree. We just are doing the loving thing by putting ourselves in their shoes. And we have to be regulated and self-loving in order to do that. We need to be in our bodies. We need to be aware of our breath. We need to be self-respectful so that we can radiate that kind of respect to the person in front of us. I learned something from one of our heart-centered members who's a psychologist, Dr. Erin, E-R-I-N, woman. And I think we're having a conversation about empathy in one of our workshops. And I was saying how, with all of my other psychiatrists, psychologists that I've actually paid to be counseled by, and with all of my friends who are licensed psychologists, I always say, how is it that you can endure listening to people who do not have it together, do not want to get it together, who are struggling with addiction again and again, and who are just there to really pour it all out on you? And the answer is always that they seek to understand on some level. I mean, that's the whole nature of psychotherapy, but that they hold faith that no matter how many times that person is going to hit their rock bottom or how dumping they are in their problems on this other person, because, it's ideally we would be coming to the therapeutic context with mutual respect, that they have faith that the person is going to get to the other side. But what Dr. Erin said to me is that in her practice, no matter how wacky someone is presenting to be, she will always say to herself, and then sometimes to the other person, it makes perfect sense that you'd feel that way. It makes perfect sense that you feel that way. So how can you be so enthusiastic, you're so keen to seek to understand that no matter how wacky, irrational, emo, over the top, narcissistic, unbelievable someone's state, someone's feeling could be, you could actually ask enough questions, dig a little deeper about their family of origin stuff, or their bad day, or their hormone levels, or their hangriness, that you could say, considering all you've been through, and the state of the world, and the kind of day you had, and what you were dealing with, it makes perfect sense why you'd feel that way. And that is such a beautiful punctuation on seeking to understand. If you've been hanging around for a while, I do not do business in a conventional way, but everything seems to be working out. I'm going to be doing a free class called Woo Woo Business That Works. Or you could say Woo Woo Business That Wooks. It is happening on Tuesday, June 11th, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you head to daniellelaporte.com/bizwebinar, that's BIZWEBINAR, INAR, Biz Webinar. You save your spot in the class, and you will also get my Heart-Centered Business Bundle download, which has the business seasons outline, the metaphysical week calendar, which we live and launch by, the Mercury retrograde guide for 2024, which you can really use for the rest of your life, and an overview of how to plan according to the Lunar New Year. Because here's the thing, quarterly objectives, cool. KPIs, sometimes essential. But myself and company have found that all of those metrics work much better when they're synced with a seasonal calendar, with metaphysical principles, with heart-centered leadership. So, woo-woo business, that works. I've got proof. Tuesday, June 11th. I will see you there. It's free. DanielleLaporte.com/biz webinar. Save your spot. Okay, secondly, I think that relationships thrive when we can hold the vision of the other person achieving their goals. We both thrive. We all thrive when we can see the other person winning. So this is really important in this way of being together. You can see someone's goals. You can tap into the feeling. This is it. You can tap into the feeling of how happy they're going to be when they crush it, when they win. They are going to exude and radiate achievement, satisfaction, happiness. And because of that, you're going to be so joyful for them. Yeah. Their happiness is your happiness. That's my oversimplified, maybe not so simplified definition of love. Your happiness matters as much to me as my happiness does. And same with your sadness. Okay, so here's the thing with being in partnership or on a team, any kind of team, a neighborhood, a community, and seeing someone else getting what they want. You do not have to worry about how they're going to achieve it. So someone could say, I want to win the Olympics. I want to launch this business. I want to meet the love of my life. I want to run the marathon. And maybe they are clearly, evidently so far from pulling any of that off. You don't have to worry about their workout plan or them getting a business coach or learning how economics works. You just need to visualize their satisfaction from their success. That's it. You don't need to plan it. You don't need to concern yourself if they have the resources to pull it off. You are tapping into the feeling of how happy they're going to be with their achievement. If it's really a stretch, all you need to do is grab onto one part of their dream that you can believe in. You have faith that, yeah, they can make a connection. They can get to the class that they're going to need to take to pull off the big goal. They can most definitely, undoubtedly, learn a few new tricks. And you let that faith in those small steps in the segments of the bigger vision relax your mind and your judgment and your project planning and your lovely desire to control people on behalf of their fulfillment, because we know better on behalf of loving. And you just chill out a little more with the strategy and the headiness. And then your mind can drop into the center of your heart. And you can feel the feeling that they will feel when they achieve what they want to achieve. I actually have some relationship regret around this for myself. I was in a committed relationship with someone who had a pretty audacious goal for the second chapter of their career. And it was going to require some really savvy organizational leadership skills. And where they were in current time, at the beginning of his dream, they weren't the most organized person that I'd ever met. And they had some social anxiety, probably the beginning of what could have become social anxiety disorder, and they were really struggling to lead their own life and lead other people. And when they shared that dream with me, I just really, I told myself, this is so ego. This is so self-centered. This is so not St. Francis. I just told myself that the integrous thing to do, the true and authentic thing to do was to not bolster them around this dream, to not like give them quote unquote false hope about pulling that off. And I think that was just really shitty relationship behavior from me. I think out of love, I should have scanned their life to see where they were currently being a good leader and really organized, whether that was like with their buddies or in the community somehow, or how they walk the dog. And I should have just really celebrated the fuck out of the behaviors they were exhibiting that they could have built on to move into this dream of being a great leader. And instead, I hemmed and I hawed and I withheld my love. And that is not team, and that is not how relationships thrive. Which brings me to point number 3, respect. I think mutual respect is the foundation of any loving relationship. Everybody is a work in progress, and there's lots of things we're doing that are not our best selves, but there is always something to find in the person you are in relationship with, sitting across the table from, that you can respect. You can respect their knowledge, their experience, their endurance, the way they are with their pets, their kids, their neighbors. You can respect how they manicure their lawn. You can respect that they are punctual, that they smell good. You can respect their hairstyle and that they always show up with great footwear. Whatever it is, you find something that you can respect and honor in that person. If you really got to dig, you can respect that that person made it this far and they are not in the psych ward. You can respect that they have the capacity to get out of the psych ward. I mean, it's just a miracle that we are all here right now, that we had the means to get the technology. We had the consciousness to hear a conversation about goodwill and thriving relationships. And we just made it this far on this planet without going crazy or going to jail. Yeah. And we probably have some modicum of hope in humanity. We have good hygiene, and we're trying to be hopeful, and we show up and we're decent people. Respect. Energy of respect, precious, worthy of dignity. How do you respect people? You fight for their dignity. You honor their privacy. I think this is something that's often left out of all kinds of relationships. Respect is we don't share their secrets. Respect is we believe in their dreams. Respect is our tone is kind and buoyant and pliable and open. We communicate without the jab, without the hook, with respect. And once you get that flowing, then you can be curious. And this is point number 4. We're open and we're curious about what? About our differences. So it's easy to be curious about how we got to where we are and how we grew up and like even like the sweet small stuff. How was your day? That kind of stuff. But can we be curious about the things that set us apart, the potential areas of rupture and fraction, the potential areas for disagreement and ruptures? Can we be curious about why we're polarized, why we might be extremely different? So one of the key reasons that a relationship will go from surviving to actually thriving, this is the stuff of miraculousness and healing and intimacy and expansion, is that you are first curious about your differences. Because here's the thing with being curious first. It dissolves judgment. So you can have all your judgments and we can have all of our opinions and our differences and maybe we actually have the wisdom and the insight to see that the other person is like a little bit askew. But if we just lead with the interest, the sincere interest, all that judgy stuff in the head just starts to relax and we can actually get closer to the other person. So you could be asking things like, so I'll give you an example. I'm in IKEA. I think IKEA is like the petri dish for all relationship dynamics. If you can actually get through shopping for your Billy shelves and your Bjorkstra and your Rimforsa and your Stuparb without having a meltdown, then you should probably get married, which is how I knew for sure I wanted to marry my guy who just popped in actually for a kiss. So Will and I are in IKEA and I'm shopping for a light fixture and my style is very mod and clean and zen. I don't like any flourish. I don't like any finish on things. I especially do not jive with things that are antique-y and have this kind of patina because to me, forced patina, something that is faux aged, is faux. I want things that are legit beat up, that really, really went through the test time. Anyway, so we're in the lighting section and I pick out the classic white Swedish ball and Will picks out this kind of steampunk brassy, I can't even describe it without kind of rolling my eyes, light fixture. And I just caught myself just about to do the eye roll and the nose curl and be like, no, babe. And instead, because, in love, and also didn't want to be like a total design snob, I just said, tell me, babe, like, what is it about this that you love? And we got into this whole conversation about things that stand the test of time, things that don't look too precious, nostalgia, how he felt in his family rec room. And it turned into like this whole story about warm, sweet memories. And by the end of it, I was starting to have some affection for this really terrible light fixture. Of course, it has no place in my life, but more importantly, it warmed me up to the person I was in love with. So you might want to be asking questions beyond IKEA, like, what about that do you dig? Why do you like that? What does that remind you of? Where did you first hear about that? When did you first see that? Why is that inspirational? Why is that aspirational? Now, here's a nuance to this. My experience is it's not good to ask questions like, why don't you like that? Because that just affirms a kind of negative perspective. And there's usually kind of like a heavier, more negative reply, right? They're affirming the darker stuff. You have to ask those questions around the edge about memory and taste and other associations. Curiosity first, and then we thrive. Which makes everything way more fun, which is point number 5. We have to actually prioritize fun. So let me define fun. Silly, playful, non-productive. Stuff, jokes, activities, date nights, game nights, holidays, memes, whatever it is. And the only objective is really no objective. The objective, the intention, that's the word I want. The intention is lightness, levity, happiness, silliness. We need it. It helps the mind relax. It helps us connect. Just play. Play helps us move into the heart. And when we're in the heart, connect regulated nervous systems. Turns out that silliness is the back door to intimacy. Okay, let's talk about a common term in the wellness space, co-regulation. So nervous system dysregulation is when you are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You are basically in a place of unhealthy stress. Your stress, this is the best way to put it. When our stress is stressing us out, we're dysregulated. When we can meet our stress with love, equanimity, even-mindedness, a mature response to stress, then we are actually regulating. And just a reminder that your nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, central nervous system, it is that network of feeling and sensing in your body that informs how you relate to the world. It's a really big deal. Okay, so regulation is when we are having a conscious response. We can be chill with whatever is going on around us. Now, co-regulation, popular term, is when we're in relationship with somebody. It could be anybody. It could be a stranger. It could be intimate. And we are co-regulating. We're doing things that help bring the other person into balance, into comfort. And that's different for everybody. And part of getting to know each other is knowing what are the things that help us regulate and come back into center. For some of us, it's touch. Actually, this is a place where we could really apply the teaching of the 5 love languages. So this is all Gary Chapman's work. If you don't know about it yet, I'll put it in the show notes. Acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, that's me, and physical touch. If we can be that for the person we're relating to, that will help them come to center, right? Okay, now here's the subtlety with this tip for thriving in relationship. That you can self-regulate. You can come into balance on your own after you co-regulate. So let me walk you through that scenario. So we've co-regulated. We're doing the dance with someone. It's a positive conversation. It's a negative moment. We're doing the harmony. It's the touch. It's the hug. It's the kind words. It's the plan to go out and do something together. It's taking out the garbage. Like, you are in team mode. You're in it to win it together. You're intentionally doing whatever needs to be done to help that other person feel comfort, be loved. Okay? So we good? We're good. You buttoned it up. You had your moment of love. And then you don't forget about you. You can leave that conversation. You can leave that meeting, that moment of intimacy, and you remember that you can still regulate yourself. You're going to go for the walk around the block. You're going to give yourself your own love language. You're going to tell yourself something positive. You're going to book a massage. You're going to do something that feels gifty, whatever it is. So you know that you can do the healing. You can be a great partner with somebody else, for somebody else. You can be a great leader. And then you can shift into extended self-care. Sounds like health insurance, but you get the idea. Okay, you know how to thrive? You hold on to the philosophy. You know in every cell of your being that all relationships have ebb and flow. You are good with the ebb and flow. You understand that growth and reality has its ups and downs. You know it's coming. There's bliss and there's bumps. You're a philosophical grown-up. So when the bliss happens, you really celebrate it. You appreciate it. You don't cling on to it. And when the fractures come, you can be in more acceptance like capital A acceptance, soul quality acceptance, less resistance, which is going to help you make space for vulnerability. So let me break this one down for you. Making space for vulnerability is about intentional communication. This is about, I talked about this in the episode where I give you my love story about Will and I and the things we do to really stay connected and build a connection. That's episode 113. I talk about the moment when we were actually at a relationship workshop, and I was on stage speaking. It was at the In Bloom event, Real Love Ready. And I was talking about being a container for vulnerability. And Will said, every time he hears the word container, all he can see in his mind is a big yellow shipping container. And so now our cue for when I want to share something like really like sacred and needy, and I just don't like feel very evolved, or it's like a little bit prickly and spicy, I just say, babe, I need you to be my big yellow shipping container right now. And he just puts his hand on my shoulders and says, okay, babe, I'm here. So there's the intentionality around communicating. And it can be as simple as like, you've got your corner of the sofa, or you dim the lights and dim all the lights, sweet baby, because now, sorry, I just slipped into Donna Summer for a second, but like you get it. You create some sacredness around things. You put your phone in a drawer. Please put your phone in a drawer. Do you know there's some study? I don't have the actual study for you, but apparently there's a study. I don't even need the study. I can tell you, I can be my own data for this. There's a study that showed that when people are in meetings, whether it's restaurants or in a business setting, and they have their cell phones on the table, people's heart rate variability goes up, meaning everybody is made more anxious by the very presence of the cell phones. So you want to be a big yellow shipping container and move into a sacred space for vulnerability for whoever you're with, put your phone away. So here's the thing. You're really being mindful that you want to be the recipient of vulnerability, that in the right conditions, we will share on a deeper level. Of course, it's all the stuff. You're okay to share your secrets. Crying happens. But I think there's something about this where you as the listener, you as the witness, are actually like from a heart place, not from an ego, want to gang up on them and get the dirt place, but from your unconditional, loving vastness. You want to receive the depth of that person. And in order to do that, you got to say, okay, I'm here for it. I've got all the time in the world for you tonight, or whatever it is. And your tone is rhythmic, no hooks, no jabs. And if you have to, you're explicit about respecting their privacy. You could say like, I love it when therapists in the past have said to me, I've heard it all before, Danielle. You can tell me anything and it's not going to freak me out. That gives me space. That's a beautiful container for vulnerability. Okay, so that's one of the key ways that relationships thrive. We intentionally make space for vulnerability. My loves, I want you to know about Summer of Love, June, July, August. I'm doing mini courses and workshops on relationships, on connecting more deeply to yourself, self-respect, on self-intimacy, on better communication with everybody in your life. And then we're going to round up through August with a resentment detox. So if you go to daniellelaporte.com/waitlist, you'll be one of the first to know about the doors opening to the Heart Centered membership. Heart Centered membership is a support system for your body, mind, and your spirit, and sometimes your work in the world. I've got a life track and I have a business track. Every month I do a workshop and an audio book. So beautiful. You can think of it as self-help in the front and business in the back. daniellelaporte.com/waitlist. Heart-centered membership doors to join are only going to be open now twice a year. June, it's on, and then we wait until 2025. Summer of Love is about to begin. I've got so many how-tos and hugs for you. daniellelaporte.com/waitlist. Okay, number 9, we can only thrive if we know how to repair. The misunderstandings, the hurt feelings, the resentments, all inevitable because we know ebb and flow life. Do you go back and say you're sorry? Do you have your safe words? My safe word with Mr. Will is distress. I'm actually freaking out. I need a hug. Don't leave me. That's code word for all of that. Do you have some agreements in place that if one of you needs a break, needs space, you're going to communicate on when you're going to reconvene? Love notes, a joke, laughter. Taking a deep breath, closing your eyes, and remembering why you fell in love with that person. Whether it's like your kids or someone in your family or the love of your life. And in that moment, you cannot believe that you married this person. You can't believe you hired them. You just, Just take a breath. Bring to mind one of your favorite moments together. The laughter, the time they lent you the $200, the belly laugh, their sweetest characteristic, how generous they are, your favorite meals, holidays, that one vacation. Just soften, just move back into sweetness. That helps the ego relax, the survival mind, the unhealed inner child, and you can move into being the parent of the solutions. And that is one way, that is one step towards successfully and safely repairing after conflict. Got to have those tools in place for thriving. Which brings us to point number 10 of thriving. Flexibility helps us thrive. Adaptability, tenderness, gentleness, all conditions of thriving. Actually, I did a whole episode on this, number 108, about softening being the power move, 10 ways to soften. Softening is thriving. Softening is sincerely apologizing for any harm done. Softening is compassion. And softening is the opposite of brittle. I'm going to read you a piece that I wrote years ago called The Epidemic of the Brittle Woman and the Salvation of Softness. You know her. Maybe you are her, or you were. And sisters, please, don't become her. Sisters and brother, we need to heal her because she is giving up on love and life, sometimes as a result of having to try too hard to get her very essential needs met. She just got worn down. She had no choice, or so she thought, but to stiffen. And then she realized that she did have a choice, and she heard Anais Nin say, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Sometimes she just has no experience of supple because it was never shown to her. Sometimes brittleness can come down the female lineage tree like arthritis. But then she heard her spirit say, I miss the softness of you. The brittle woman belittles her man, and it kills her to kill him like that. But she's so strapped down by hungry ghosts and frustration and fear that she can't seem to help herself until she realizes that not only can she help herself, she can help the whole wide world. There's juicy bitches and there's mean bitches. She's not the juicy kind. Because the brittle woman tells everyone what to do like her life depends on it. But beneath her grip, she senses that there are plenty of reasons to trust life, and that people are beautiful, and that they'll come through eventually. The brittle woman has a hard time being happy for everyone else's happiness, and this keeps her disconnected from free-flowing love, which is what she wants the most, free-flowing love. She started cutting up her fruit instead of biting it whole. She stopped wearing perfume and celebrating what only women can celebrate. She let the day-to-day become her cause, and she drugged her inner activist with conformity. She stopped circulating her wishes. She forgot. She forgot that if she fully admitted to her desire, if she leaned back on the universe, if she opened her heart and her eyes, and sometimes maybe her legs, the power of her truth would come rushing in. And then she heard Audre Lorde sing, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. And the brittle woman caught herself in the mirror. And she saw possibility, and she heard her spirit say, your openness will move the world. Relationships thrive in softness. If you are a he, a she, a they, we stay tender and we all win. We seek to understand. We tap into the feeling of how happy we're going to feel when our loved one, when the person on our team achieves their goal. We're respectful. Respect is precious, worthy of dignity, taking care of the other person. We're really, truly curious about our differences. We prioritize the fun. We can self-regulate after we co-regulate. We get back to loving on ourselves after we have poured our love into the container of the relationship. We know that ebb and flow is life. We get really, really intentional about creating space for vulnerability because that's the sacred stuff. We have faith that we can repair pretty much anything. And we practice gentleness as an antidote to the vast majority of all relationship snags. Okay, so before we go, how can we get practical? Is there a question of curiosity that you can ask somebody in your life in the next 3 days? What are you going to do to prioritize fun and play with more than one person in your life? You got a week to do it. I'm so glad you're here. And if this helps you thrive in any way, reviews, subscribing, forwarding, listening to the very end of the podcast helps us lift the consciousness up in the whole podcast space. I will see you next Wednesday with love and thriving. Danielle. Thank you so much for listening, for feeling, for spreading the word. With love.